I was sucked into this truth movement which said, oh, we need a new investigation into 9/11, so let's all get together in a group and let's say we'll go and write to our MPs and we'll say, we need a new investigation into 9/11. Let's get one now, sorted. We need it. And I was caught up with that to a degree, not a huge degree. And then again, I came across what Dr. Judy was doing, and I realised there was a very important difference. She wasn't going round saying, oh, we need a new investigation. She'd actually knuckled down and actually started doing it with all the resources that she could bring to bear. And she was using her professional expertise as well as the available evidence. There was a substantial amount of evidence available. And she was putting that together. She was doing the investigation. She was categorising the phenomena that she was seeing. In other words, it was an independent investigation. It was completely off her own back. She'd sacrificed a lot to complete this investigation and continued to do so. So it was independent, unfunded, not attached to government. It was an investigation. We've got an independent investigation into the events of 9/11. At the very least, as far as the World Trade Center goes, because that's where Dr. Judy has, focused most of the research. So people were going around asking for an investigation, and I'd managed to get involved with somebody who was actually doing an investigation. And I think we had a bit of a problem because we didn't really make a big enough thing of that. We didn't actually use the right language to tell people it was an investigation. And I've had people say to me, oh, well, I never considered that Dr. Judy was doing an investigation, but now you actually put it like that, I can see that, I can see what you're saying, Yeah. And then over and above that, because of the way she'd done it, it made it suitable to take it to court. And I think that's what I think we need, Judy needs to tell you, tell the listeners, and how important that is, and what the reaction to that has been in all around, basically.
Right. Well, straight after the song that we're about to play, if Dr. Judy would like to explain that, because I know we spoke about it briefly before we went on air, but there's some very interesting goings on in the legal realms with all this, and reading between the lines, there's a lot more to be learned than you would first think on the face of it. So if we go to a song now, and after that we'll pursue that line, I think, and ask some questions from our listeners. So if you want to put the song on stage. Welcome back everyone to Northeast Truth Radio, courtesy of TNS.com. With me tonight are Dr. Judy Wood and Andrew Johnson. Dr. Wood, before we went for our song, you were about to tell us about the legal action that you started in America. Do you want to expand on that for us?
Yes, I had a brilliant lawyer who found a way through the system, a way into it, an avenue by which to pursue. We can't sue the government, but we can sue federal contractors who do fraudulent work for the government, paid for by taxpayers. And that is the Keatam case, which is a whistleblower case, which needs an act of whistleblowing. So he had me submit a request for correction to NIST, saying what was wrong with the report. That, it violates the laws of physics. It doesn't follow this, What about the toasted cars?
If we just explain what the NIST reports are, I'll just briefly...
Go ahead, thanks.
Because what happened was, obviously 9/11 happened, and then Congress gave a mandate to a government agency, I don't know if agency is the right word, government body perhaps, called NIST, which is the National Institute for Standards and Technology, and they were tasked with producing a set of reports to explain how and why, or really how the World Trade Center building...
No, how and why. How and why,
okay. And so they were given, I think, was it $15 million or $16 million?
About, yeah.
But yeah, around that sort of sum. And I think it took them, was it two years to do, was it? I think it started in 2003, didn't it? I think, and then published in 2005. 10,000 pages of reports with various sections, fire safety reports and some irrelevant stuff, and how the supposed planes, made the steel weaken and all this rubbish. And so those then became the taxpayers' reports to explain what happened to the towers, and that was the official scientific position that was given to the US people and the world, as to say, right, that's it, we know how the World Trade Center was destroyed, and that's that. And just to give you one example that was in there, which Dr. Judy might give a bit more detail on if needs be, but if you go into that report, you'll find a company called Underwriters Laboratories, and they were tasked with reconstructing the steel structure, and I think things like some of the sort of concrete layers or whatever, the way
in the floor trusses and floor
trusses, and they were tasked with reconstructing that to the original specifications or as close as they could get. So they set it on fire, and they burned the simulated floor for twice as hot, for twice as long, and the floor didn't even collapse, didn't fail. But they signed off on their report to say that was a valid explanation for how the floors collapsed.
Right, this alludes back to the pancake effect that was the original official
the official story. That's right. So in other words, their experiment and reproduction did not reproduce what happened to the World Trade Center. Yet they said it was still valid, and they did
4 tests. Yeah, 4 tests and 4 out of 4.
Okay, yeah. Right.
Just to fill in slightly on the background, the Underwriters Laboratories that you're referring to there, they're the people that basically measure how long it takes to burn, blow up, or in any other way get into a safe. That's one of the things that those people do. Whenever you buy a big fancy safe in a bank vault, it has an Underwriters Laboratories designation.
Like quality control.
Precisely, yeah. So they're supposed to be the acknowledged experts on that sort of thing, aren't they?
That's right. And then going on to that you mentioned sort of the quality control thing. Well, that was what essentially Dr. Judy was challenging NIST under. There's a US law called the Data Quality Act, the DQA, which the attorney had identified that as an avenue for
the key term.
Challenging, the key term for challenging NIST. In other words, their data should be verifiable and of sufficient quality to be up to the job that they're paid the money to do. And Dr. Judy was able to point out in a 50-page document, the original RFC, was it?
Yeah. And then more.
Yeah, and then more later.
I had some appendixes.
Right, and so that's what you did, isn't it? So if you sort of take over from that.
Yeah, and the initial one, and I also, one of the appendixes I filed right afterwards, was noting a conflict of interest that 2 of the major manufacturers and developers of directed energy weapons were the biggest contractors that, most number of people came from any one group that NIST had hired.
Right, so they're all from within the military-industrial complex.
Yes, and not only that, there's one particular one, the Applied Research Associates. And, so NIST said, we didn't know there's a conflict of interest. You need to show us that there's, we weren't supposed to, we didn't even try to figure out the collapse. Our physics do stand up to, scrutiny, because we stopped evaluating it before the tower came apart. We didn't evaluate the collapse.
So your law case was essentially that they'd fraudulently submitted technical data that's veracity was easily questionable, and that is fraud because they were billing the taxpayer for that.
Yeah. Right. We have NIST admitting fraud. NIST, even though they're mandated by Congress to investigate how and why the towers collapsed, they admitted right away that they didn't. And in writing, when they responded to my requests for correction, they said, we didn't analyze the collapse. So, we aren't held accountable for whether or not it obeys the laws of physics, or scenario does. But they thought I did, they claimed I didn't prove that there's a conflict of interest because the array has anything to do with directed energy weapons. So when I did the appeal, I had, a whole host of things, including a federal grant that paid ARA to know everything about any weapon of mass destruction that existed on the planet or was being developed on the planet or probably off the planet too. In other words, they would know not only, what technology it was, but probably whose technology.
Right.
And there was a pedigree to this, because there's a website anybody can look at, and it's called DEPS, DEPS, which is the Directed Energy Professional Society.org, www.deps.org. And ARA, this group, Applied Research Associates, they were one of the founding members of that group, Directed Energy Professional Society. And, they have these various sponsorship levels of silver and bronze and gold, I believe. Mm-hmm. And so there is a whole, sort of machinery there of research and companies actually developing directed energy weapons. And in fact, 3 of them were named as contractors who in Dr. Wood's Ketam case. And we've had Boeing was actually the 3rd one, because Boeing, they were involved with developing the directed energy, the airborne laser, which was billed as America's first directed energy weapon, at least in the white world, of course. And so we had those 3 contractors, Boeing, Applied Research Associates, and another company called SAIC, which is Science Applications International Corporation, who I had previously heard of in stuff I was researching into the Disclosure Project, because they're a company that seems to be a benefactor of significant size in the black budget. And Science Applications International Corporation, it turns out, were in charge of the communications at Ground Zero from the time the event happened. And then they were in charge of security, I believe. Isn't that right, Judy?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So we've already got this very smelly kind of situation arising with these conflicts of interest. All the evidence is there, and going back to what I was saying just before the break, nobody wanted to talk about this. When I tried to post this stuff on the UK 9/11 forum, it was essentially, it was saying that this was just speculation, or there was no evidence, or in some cases the thread that I started was moved into the controversial section. Even though you could go and check all of this, you could go onto this website, look at the contractors, find out who they are, then you could go onto Science Applications International website, look at what they did, look at what ARA did. You could see that this was all public, on the public record. We weren't making this up. Yet nobody wanted to know about it.
The head of ARA's team on the NIST report presented technical papers at engineering conferences on directed energy weapons. Yeah. There's something I wanted to add is when what I call them Easter eggs, they're laying out there for any 3-year-old to find, and they think they found something. On the afternoon of 9/11, there was a fellow from New Mexico Tech that said, that's obviously bombs in the building that did that. It's obviously controlled demolition. And then 5 days later, he retracted it, as the story goes, and then got $85 million in government grant money.
Was this Van Romero, was it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, Andrew had mentioned Directed Energy Professional Society. They have annual meetings.
Right.
1 year before 9/11, Van Romero taught a short course in directed energy weapons.
Right.
Mm. And I like to
from
just
a layman's point of view, that if the directed energy weapons themselves are conspiracy theory to the average person in the street. They have no idea that. I mean, if they don't exist, how come there's professional associations for employees?
Yeah.
It's a little bit bizarre,
There's one little add-on to that I try and sort of mention to people as well. We've established the energy connection not only from this angle, but through people like Stephen E. Jones, who are, supposedly, legitimate researchers. But there's another angle that people who've looked at the 9/11 as conspiracy stories, or whatever you want to call them, will know of the story of Norman Mineta. And Norman Mineta was the transport secretary, and he was the only official that was held over from the Clinton administration to the Bush administration. He testified before Lee Hamilton of the 9/11 Commission, and he basically tells this story of being in a bunker with VP Cheney, Dick Cheney, and this young man came into the bunker as the plane was approaching the Pentagon, and said, "Sir, the plane is 20 miles out. What should we do?" And Cheney didn't react, and he said, "The plane is,